This is a review on algebraic equations. We have one-step and two-step algebraic equations. The clip art that I put on the bottom is actually a satellite, but it's kind of like a balance scale because I want you to remember that's what we have when we have an equal sign. The equal sign is the center of this thing, and on one side we have a 5 plus g, and on the other side we have a negative 11. And right now they weigh the same. What we want to do though is we don't want to be weighing 5 plus g, we just want to be weighing g. So there's this extra thing weighed with it that we want to get rid of. Part of what I want you to understand about an algebraic equation is it's already been done. Somebody did the math. We're not doing it. We're undoing it. So if we're undoing it, we have to do the opposite of what was done. So the opposite of plus 5 is to subtract 5. So I'm going to subtract 5 from this side, but you can imagine this satellite slash scale balance. If I take 5 off one side, isn't it going to be out of balance? But it won't be out of balance if I take 5 off both sides. So when I subtract 5 from this side, it disappears, and look what we're weighing. We're just weighing a g. On the other side, we're doing negative 11 plus negative 5, which is negative 16. Now we know what g weighs. It equals negative 16. I'm going to show it two other ways because that is the same way. I mean, they're all three the same way. They're just a little bit different way of showing your work. Here's the other one, which is called cancellation. Identify the variable and what's with the variable. Undo what's with the variable. Do the opposite because you're not doing it, you're undoing it. Cancels out, you're left with g. Now you have a problem over here that you do and get negative 16. Another way that I teach is the rainbow method. Put the variable down here and then put the operation and what was done to the g. So I say they because somebody's already done this, they added 5 and they got an answer of negative 11. Well, they built this thing up to something it wasn't, so we're going to tear it back down. So where they added 5, we're going to subtract 5. And then we just start where they finished and we just do that problem. And when you do that, you'll be tearing it back down. So they built it up, we're going to tear it back down. Negative 11 plus negative 5, negative 16, all three ways, just different ways of showing it. Here's another problem, negative 20 equals 3f. And some of you are accustomed to using guess and check to figure out what that is. So 3 times what got you negative 20. But it doesn't always come out even, and that's one thing I want you to understand why we need to learn how to solve it rather than just guess and check it. Because this one doesn't come out even, because there's not a whole number that goes in there for that f to make it true. Because like 7 gets you 21 and 6 gets you 18, so it's going to be somewhere between negative 6 and negative 7. So again, there was a 3f on this one, and they got negative 20, but we don't want to know what 3f's is, so we do the opposite. They multiplied, we will divide. Those cancel out. They actually become 1f, which is its identity. And over here we get, let me show you the work. That's negative 20 divided by 3. Of course, we're just saying there's one negative, so my answer is going to be negative. And now I'm dealing with their absolute values. 20 divided by 3 is 6 with 2 remainders, so that's negative 6 and 2 thirds. So f equals negative 6 and 2 thirds. If I did it with rainbow, there was an f that somebody took times 3, and they got an answer of negative 20, so let's tear it down. If they multiply by 3, we will divide by 3. And that gets us that negative 6 and 2 thirds. Now we're in a two-step equations. Those other two were one-step equations. Only one thing had been done to the variable. If two things are done to the variable, you also need to reverse not just the operation, but the order. So I think about socks and shoes. If you're putting on your socks and then your shoes, you're going to see some wonderful artwork right here. You put them on. If you want to take them off, think about which one has to come off first. It's hard to peel your sock off before you peel your shoe off. So you put on your sock, you put on your shoe. To undo it, you take off your shoe, then you take off your sock. The operation switched from put on to take off, and the order switched from sock, shoe to shoe, sock. This time I'm going to start with the rainbow method. There was a C. Think about order of operations. What would they have done? Would they have added or multiplied? Well, they're doing the problem in order of operations, so they would have multiplied by 5 and then added 4 to get to a negative 11. How do I undo plus 4? Minus 4. How do I undo times 5? Divide by 5. And we want to make sure we do it. So if you're in this order, so if you're doing it on a calculator, you make sure you hit equals right there. Negative 11 minus 4 equals negative 15. Negative 15 divided by 5 is negative 3. So C equals negative 3. Here's what it looks like in cancellation. They did this, then this, so that's the one I undo first. I subtract 4 from both sides. They cancel out, so now I have just a 5C on this side. and I have a negative 15 on this side. They multiplied by 5, so I'm going to divide by 5 to undo what they did. Those cancel out, and you're left with C equals, one negative makes it negative, C equals negative 3. Another thing we should always talk about and remember is that you can always check your answers in this, so we'll do that one on this one. We'll check our answer. To check your answer, you put in your answer for the variable and go see if it's a true statement. If negative 3 is what C is, then this should be a true statement. So if I multiply first, because I'm now doing the problem, I get negative 15. Then I have to add 4 to it. They have different signs, so I subtract sign of the larger, I get negative 11. Does it match? Yes, then C is negative 3. Another two-step equation, we have something on top of, W on top of 4, which means divide. So I would start with leave, change opposite, just to get rid of any subtraction. Now I'm going to start with, I'll do with cancellation first this time. So they divided by 4, then they added negative 6. So that's the first thing I want to get rid of. So I'm going to add 6 to both sides. Those cancel out, and I'm left with W divided by 4 and negative 3 plus 6. They have different signs, so I subtract sign of the larger. And then they divided by 4, so I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to times by 4 on both sides. Those cancel out, and you're left with W equals 12. W equals 12. Here's what it looks like with rainbow. There was a W that they divided by 4. Then they added negative 6. They got negative 3. Now to undo plus negative 6, you need to change one of them. You don't want to do leave, change opposite. That'll be doing the same thing. So I'm just going to change one of them. I'll change it to plus positive 6. And then what's the opposite of divide by 4? Times 4. Make sure you hit equals. Negative 3 plus 6. Well, they have different signs. We subtract. Sign of larger, we get 3. And then 3 times 4 is 12. Again, we could check it by taking that and plugging it back in. So let me plug that 12 back in. If I put 12 right there, 12 divided by 4 is 3. So then 3 minus 6 is negative 3. And does it match? Yes, that's our answer. On this one, I would go through the steps to simplify first. Leave, change opposite. Distributive property, remember that's an understood 1y. So now when I bust it out of jail, it's 4y plus negative 28 equals negative 15. Now we're in a two-step equation, so we can solve it. This time I'll do it with rainbow first. There was a y. They took times 4, added negative 28, got negative 15. Remember, I need to undo this by changing one of the signs. So this time I'll change it to minus negative 28. Make sure you hit equals if you're doing it on a calculator, and then divide by 4. Negative 15 minus negative 28, of course, I'm going to do leave, change opposite anyway, since I'm doing it by hand. And I get 13. And then 13 divided by 4, well, 4 goes in there 3 times to make 12, and there'd be 1 left over, so 3 1/4. Y equals 3 1/4. Here it is in cancellation. They did this, then this, so let me undo that. I'm going to add 28 to both sides. They cancel out, and you're left with 4y. Over here on the other side, they have different signs, so I subtract sign of the larger. Now they multiplied by 4, so I will divide by 4. Those cancel out, so on this side of the equal sign on our balance, we have y, and over here we have an answer of 13/4, or if we divide out 3 with 1 remainder, 3 1/4. All right, this one, I'm going to bust them out of jail first. That gets me 15 plus 9d equals 7. Now we're in a two-step equation, so I'll do it with cancellation first this time. They did this, then this, so I need to get rid of this by subtracting 15. They cancel out over here, so I'm just left with 9d on this side. And over here, different sign subtract, sign of the larger, I get negative 8. Then, how do I undo the times 9 that they did? I divide by 9. Divide by 9. These cancel out, and I'm left with d equals negative 8 ninths. D equals negative 8 ninths. Here's what it looks like with rainbow. There was this d. And by the way, I'm going to go back up to this equation. But I could do it. I guess I could do it as a three-step equation. I'll do it as a three-step equation so you see it that way. Wouldn't they do the grouping symbol first? And inside there, wouldn't they multiply first? So really, they would have multiplied by 3. Then they would have added 5. They're now done with their parentheses. So then they take it times 3. And they got an answer of 7. So we need to divide by 3, subtract 5, and divide by 3. and hit equals on your calculator each time. 7 divided by 3 is 7/3. I'm just going to leave it like that. 7/3 minus 5. Well, maybe I won't leave it like that. That'll be 2 1/3 minus 5, which gets me a negative 2 2/3. And then negative 2 2/3 divided by 3. Man, we're getting a little bit too harder math here. Divided by 3. Remember, that's the same as times 1/3, right? So I could go to negative 8/3 times 1/3. I'm doing it over here if you can't see that. And I get negative 8/9. So it still works out to get us negative 8/9.